Hello, Bob.
Hey, good day, you lovely people. How are you?
We're great. How about you?
Well, it's simple, mate. Life is supposed to be simple, eh? I create my life, which is why it is so awesome.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, Bob, we're so happy to have you here. So honored to have you here. So with that, I think we'll just jump into it if you don't mind. We're going to go on mute, and you're going to tell your story, and we're just going to follow along and be mesmerized by your journey. All right. Take it away, Bob.
Well, you know, I prepared myself. My bladder is empty and my glass of rum is full. And I pick up the talking stick. I'd just like to share with you where I am now. And I'm 68 years old. And I'm content. And I believe that we are all Sue. And that's S-U-E, not S-I-O-U-X. We are all Sue. And for me, that means sovereign, unique, and equal. And everything else just flows from that. And also, I believe that the universe operates under the KISS principle, which is keep it simple, sovereign. And how I drive my life is I am master and commander of my life, and I take full responsibility for this life that I do create. So as master, I was wondering, what's my life purpose? So I set my life purpose. So as master, I set my life purpose to simply find my own truth. And how do I know what is my own truth? Whatever resonates with my heart. And then, again, as master, I'm a spiritual being having a human physical experience. How do I want to experience this life? So I set my own conscious life intention, which is, I am here to have a happy, gentle, joyful, loving, and abundant life. And since I set that conscious life intention, that is precisely how my life is unfolding. So I have no fear of the future, because my future is unfolding in a line with that conscious life intention. And it's amazing, it's amazing. But okay, I'll get to the story. My story, the wounds and lessons of childhood. And yeah, thanks for your tolerance. It'll probably take about 20 minutes, so kick off your shoes, grab a coffee or whatever, relax, and enjoy. I can't kick off because I do not own a pair of shoes, but okay, here we go. My story, the wounds and lessons of childhood. I was born in 1952 in England, very premature, and delivered by cesarean section. My mother never forgave me for the scar on her belly. I was about 2 pounds at birth and was not expected to live, but I did. I'm a survivor. I'm not sure when I chose my family. Mum was prone to violent outbursts of rage, so if I got in range, then I got hit, whether I'd been good or bad. So basically, I got the crap beaten out of me for many years. So the message I internalized at that time as a child was, Mum is often beating me, therefore she does not love me. I must be unlovable, and it's all my fault. And also, this world is not a safe place. Now, Dad was a mythical being and was always at work. He came home after I went to bed, and he left for work before I came down for breakfast. So the message I got from Dad was, Dad never spends any time with me, therefore he does not love me. so I must be unlovable, and it's all my fault. When I was 6, Dad disappeared completely. He had a nervous breakdown and committed himself to Fairmont Hospital in Wallingford. I went to see him when I was 9, but by that time he was just institutionalised, just wandering around, muttering phrases that he'd heard from the doctors, like, oh, sever his frontal lobe, he needs more ECT. He did not need electric shock therapy, he just needed a bloody holiday. Anyway, to take the spotlight of my crazy family, my mum, a rageaholic, and Dad, a workaholic, I became the people pleaser and totally abandoned my needs to please others, a habit that I took into adulthood. When I was about 3, it felt like somebody had given me a wheelbarrow, and so I started pushing it. I was young and strong, but as I moved through life, more junk was dumped into it, like my childhood abuse, socio-cultural conditioning, the indoctrination of the education, and all the rest of our society's constraints. Until such time that it got too heavy to push anymore. That time was 1984. How Orwellian. When at 3 a.m. I had my first panic attack and began my dance with depression. I couldn't understand it. I could not think my way out of it. At that time I had a great job with ESSO or Exxon in research, was living the ideal magazine life, beautiful wife, 2 beautiful kids, a detached house, holidays in France. So what happened? And so the cycle of medications and psychologists and psychiatrists began and continued for many years. Skipping back to childhood to keep things chronological, when did I first start disbelieving in me? And my earliest recollection is I was about 4 3/4 years old, and I woke up one Sunday morning, got dressed, put on my favourite t-shirt, comb my hair, brushed my teeth, bounced down to breakfast, and Mum said, Bobby, why are you wearing your red t-shirt? You know you love your blue t-shirt. Go and change, put on your blue t-shirt. So I stood up confused, thinking, well, no, I love my red t-shirt. But Mum's big, and she's very angry and violent, and she is Mum. So confused, I went up and put on my blue t-shirt. And that's the first recollection I have of not believing in myself, to stop the process of believing in myself. And that's a habit that I continued and dragged into my adult life. I began to believe that other people knew how I was supposed to live. Anyway, so how do I dig myself out of this hole? Well, my family and I emigrated to Australia in November 1989 for a fresh start. But after 13 years of working so hard, my wife and I realised that we'd become strangers and that our marriage was as shallow as the rest of my life. After a lot of soul searching, we agreed to part, and Pam and the kids went back to the UK. I stayed. I knew at some level this is where I am meant to be. I must have cried for 6 months. I had great support from friends I'd met in the folk scene in Perth and Western Australia. I got a good job in automotive research and started rebuilding my life. But still with the old survival behaviours in place. My intellect was having a ball working in research, and I was developing a following in the folk scene and playing in many bands in and around Perth, and I even began touring in Western Australia. But my heart was heavy, and I was still fighting the depression. it will be many, many years before I turned that fight into a dance. Living in Fremantle, I got involved in personal growth, and I eventually became a counsellor. The first course I took was an ACA 12-step course for adult children of absent parents, which was very helpful up to the point where you have to surrender to God, and I knew then that this was a parting of the ways, because, you know, I am the one that creates my life. Next, I did a course on anger management because Mum had all the anger, so I never learned how to deal with it. About 1993, I came across John Bradshaw's work on the inner child and the family of origin, and was so impressed that with my partner at the time, we bought all the tapes and used to run weekly group sessions. John's work opened the floodgates for me as I began to understand what my dysfunctional childhood had produced. I suppose it was at this time I started developing my sense of noticing or awareness. Depression was still rolling in and out, and one day I realised that medications only last for a couple of months, and then they produce the same symptoms they're supposed to cure. And with my continued research into depression and mental illness, I realised that not one psychologist or psychiatrist has ever claimed to have cured anyone. For all they can do is work with the mind. Psychologists give you drugs to medicate the pain, and psychologists provide coping skills for you to handle the pain and live with the pain. Oh, bugger that. Anyway, I think it was Jesse Green, who's a counsellor I met in Fremantle, it on. Well, I let that bubble for a while, and then one day, and I sat down and wrote, "The letter to Mum." Dear Mum, I'm writing to tell you how it felt for me growing up in our family. This is not about blame, this is just about telling you my story. I look forward to hearing yours, your loving son, Bob. And so I sat down and wrote about how I hated being hit so often, or how she never came to school sports days, how she kept reminding me of the scar on her belly, how I hated it when she beat me with the tongs from the washing border, how I hated it when she dangled me by my wrist and beat me with a carpet sweeper. Anyway, what I thought was going to be a couple of pages ended up being like another War and Peace. Anyway, I just got it all out and put it on paper, and then signed it at the bottom, "Your loving son, Bob." And this is probably one of the hardest things I've ever done, I actually posted that letter back to Mum in the UK, in England. A few months passed, and I finally got a letter from Mum saying, "Oh, Bobby, I'm so sorry. You must think I'm the best mother in the whole world." And I just wrote back to Mum and said, "Mum, this is not about blame. This is not about blame. This is just about telling you my story. Please tell me your story." In my own journey at that time, I got to this place where, in personal growth, where gotta hate you, Mum, but you gotta love your Mum. You've only got one Mum. And it was this dichotomy that was tearing my soul apart. But I knew in my heart of hearts that posting that letter was essential for my own liberation. Eventually I got a reply from Mum, and she was born in 1924 in Germany between the wars, and how can I put it? Dad was an alcoholic and Mum was a control freak, an angry person, and as she shared a story, I began to realise that she had had an abusive childhood as well. And then the light bulb went off. Yes, Mum was doing her very, very best. But all she was doing was dumping on me what got dumped on her. So by writing that letter, I was actually in the process of handing it back. And so a few days later, I got on the phone and managed to get hold of Mum back in England, and she was back in hospital with a brand new incidence of bowel cancer, 20 years apart. And we spoke first time as mother and son, as adult to adult. Oh, and it was with tears both sides of the pond. It was just an amazing reconnection. And then the following day she died. And then, hey, you know, what a beautiful closure. A few days went by and I'm feeling much lighter, but there's still this little niggle in my shoulders, still a heaviness there. And then, boom, Dad, you bastard. So I sat down and wrote my letter to Dad. Dad had already died, so I just wrote, Dear Dad, why were you never there for me? Why did we never spend any time together? Why were you never there at school sports day? Why did we never go fishing together? You know, I just wrote it down and signed it, Your loving son, Bob. Put it in an envelope, addressed it to Dad in heaven and burnt it. And in that way, for me, I handed back what was dumped on me because I did not deserve to be treated that way. As a child, I deserved to be loved, valued, respected and guided. But for me, going through that process was like breaking the multi-generational cycle of abuse. And since I did that, I've spoken through a medium to Mum, who shared stuff with me that only Mum and I knew, so that I knew this medium was fair dinkum. And my Mum was just crying tears of joy and thanking me so much for sending that letter, because it gave her the same realization. And now she is able to work on her own wounds of childhood. Oh, amazing, eh? Anyway, not much longer. Thanks for your patience. It was 1995 on May 6th. My mind was having a ball, but my soul was crying. Depression was still ruling the roost. I was performing at Araluen Festival, and there was a combi for sale, so I bought it for $3,000, got it back home, fitted a pop top, and set it up for the mobile life, and I was ready. I remember going to my boss and saying, I quit. He was aware of my state of dis-ease, and his reply was really great. He said, yeah, Bob, I kind of get that. So I put my house on the market, and anything that would not suit the combi life, and that's a Volkswagen combi, love and peace, man. So anything that didn't suit the combi life, I sold or gave away. The first item being the TV, which means for me TerraVision. Why? Because it's full of programs, get it? Whilst waiting for the house to sell, I planned my tour of the folks festivals, and once the money was in the bank, I was off. Don't get me wrong, I only realised about 35 grand Australian from the sale of the house, but it did fund my first tour. So I set off across Australia, and 40 days and 40 nights springs to mind, and it was the first time in my life that I had to spend time with me. It was a true rite of passage. I would arrive at each festival a week or so early and join the volunteers who set up the festival, and in the evenings I would sit with others around the campfire and share the music that I loved. And in this way, the people running the festival got to know what I was about musically. So next year, when I applied to perform at these festivals, I got accepted as a paid performer. Wow. And so the wheel went round and round about 8 times over 10 years. And at the end of each tour, I would generally return to Fremantle and volunteer on the Lewin 2. She's a 3-masted barking team, a sail training vessel. and a crucible for change. And I just sailed up and down the west coast of Australia. Now, eventually, Moo, my old combi, died, and I found myself in Queensland, crucial skipper, and then a briefer. When I wrote this, I was retired. Well, I'm still retired, and I was living on my boat with my family, Barnaby and Charlie, and I am content. I have created my dream, for I am master and commander of my life. And since I wrote that in 2017, Cyclone Debbie came through here, a Category 5 cyclone, and she sat on us. You know, she didn't swoop through, she sat on us. And so she picked up my home, my boat, Fidelio, and threw it towards the land but didn't quite make it. So during that incident, I lost everything. On the Saturday, as the cyclone was coming in, the boat was bouncing up and down, and I secured it as best I could. I couldn't get the engine going because there's water in the fuel, so I thought, well, sod this. I just grabbed Barnaby and Charlie and got in the dinghy and came ashore and found safe haven. And so, you know, people say to me, "Oh, Bob, you've lost everything. You've lost everything." And my response to that was, well, hey, wasn't it an amazing experience to live through a Category 5 cyclone, you know, where I saw shipping containers being blown down the road and all the beautiful countryside around me that was lovely, luscious and green turned to brown because every leaf was stripped off every tree. It was an amazing experience to experience Mother Nature at her boldest and brassiest. But for me, I learned a valuable lesson going through that process. And that was the lesson I learned was to totally let go. You know? And I reckon I paid a fair price. Anyway, just about finished. I spent the first 40 years of my life chopping off bits of me to fit in with society. And I've spent the last 28 years going back and gathering them all up, for I now know that all of me is okay. I realise that I'm the only expert on my life, and that the pain of depression was the pain of humanity having to live in such a crazy society. And so I started the dance with depression, which is now over, and my basic steps have been, number 1, empty the wheelbarrow. Number 2, question everything that does not resonate with my heart. 3, and this was a hard one, deprogram myself from all the conditioning, especially codependent behavior. 4, re-establish my belief in me. 5, follow my heart. 6, trust my intuition. And number 7, and this is the most important one, giggle a lot. Okay, so thanks for listening, and I'll put the talking stick down. Questions and answers, here we go.
Well, that's an amazing story, Bob, and thank you for having the braveness to share that with everyone. I know that as our society now, I see a lot of people, and even myself sometimes feels that black cloud of depression coming on, but it seems like it's really rampant these days. And so I guess my question, and I think you're going to talk about this, so I'm not sure I should ask you now, but right now, today, how do you keep that balance, I guess I want to say?
Well, for me, I live in heart space. And for me, I cannot say I healed my depression, because for me, that implies that it was an illness. But it wasn't. It was a spiritual wake-up call. It was a rite of passage. And I have an amazing intellect. My IQ is about 150. Einstein was 160, go figure. But I couldn't think my way through depression, because depression's got nothing to do with the mind. It's of the heart. It's of the soul, which is why psychiatrists and psychologists will never get anywhere near it, because they only deal with the mind. The way I got through was feeling it, sitting down, and luckily I was on my boat at the time, sitting down and letting all of entrained, entrapped, suppressed feelings that I've been carrying for years to fully express. So I cried for weeks, I screamed for weeks, I slept for months, but I just got all those repressed feelings out. And I came to this realization that my feelings are healings, which is why, if you look at the statistics, there are more male suicides than female suicides, because for generations men have been programmed and denied access to their most important healing tool, and that is their feelings. Now, I don't know anybody that's died from feeling, but I met thousands that have died from not feeling. And if my life ever gets complicated, it's because my mind has slipped back into the driving seat. And so, as I am the observer of me in my life, and I sense when my life gets complicated, so I look into the driving seat and see the mind there, I just grab it by the scruff of the neck, throw it in the trunk, and put my heart back in the driving seat, and everything becomes simple again. So this, and I've noticed with the people I've met, the more intelligent and the more creative they are, the more they are locked in the trap of the intellect, trying to think their way through depression. Well, you never will. You never will. For me, the only way to get through this gift of depression is for everybody to feel their way through it. Feel their way through it. And all I'm sharing is, because we're all sovereign, unique and equal, all I am sharing is what works for me. I have found my way. And what drives me to share my story is, hopefully, some of the steps I've taken will resonate with other people. Because I've come to the realization that you are your only guru. All your answers lie within you. You can't get them from somebody else. Anyway.
Your way out of it. You can't logically. And it used to kill me when I would go into depression that people would say, "Oh, just kind of get over it. Just pick yourself up and wipe yourself off and get." And the people that I thought those people, I had a lot of empathy for them because they didn't understand what I was feeling anyway. That I would love to pick myself up, brush myself off, and get on with it. But again, I was trying to use the mind instead of the heart. So that makes perfect sense to me. Barry, did you have questions for me?
What I've found is, and I used to work as a counsellor when I was living in Fremantle, but it's not work, I never charge for it. But what I've found, there is a basic human need, and it's a very healing posture for anybody that has a friend, who's suffering. And we are here to heal each other, but that posture is simply one of acceptance and validation. So if somebody's sharing their heart with you, it's not, come on, buckle up, get the program, suck it up. That's bullshit. That's bullshit. Mm-hmm. The loving response is one of, I feel it's really a hard time for you right now. So thank you for sharing your truth right now. I now know you better. So it's acceptance and validation. That's the best gift that anybody can give to anyone they know that's in pain. For me.
Yeah, the going into the pain is interesting to me as well, because I've done that physically, like when I'm having physical pain, instead of trying to run from it, I go into it to see what my body's telling me, or honestly, to get through it. And that's true emotionally too. That I think a lot of people um, spend their life running away from the emotional pain, so they never get to come out to the other side and see the beauty on the other side, such as your story has showed us you have done.
Yeah. I believe Barry has a question.
Yeah, just real quick here, while you're there.
Take
Bob.
as long as you
I've got a question from the chat room here. We've got a good friend of ours in the chat room here, Kevin Turn, and he asked, when should you seek professional help for depression?
My response to that, and sorry for laughing, because that's a statement that comes from the mind. And my response to that is, you are your own guru.
Mm-hmm.
Only you have your answers. You are the only expert in your life. Your heart will guide you. The trick is to silence the mind. To silence the mind. Because once I silence my mind, and I'll tell you how in tools, the tool section, I could finally hear my heart. And now my heart is my only compass, and my inner tuition is my only guide. So, for me, I am the only expert on my life. We're all unique and equal. So how can somebody else have your answers? Because you're unique. Your job is to find your own solutions. S-O-U-L, solutions. That's
but
my
I will
response.
say, Bob, if I heard your story right, you did get some good advice or some ideas to write your mother, things like that, write your father. So sharing, I guess sharing isn't always bad.
Well, I believe that by sharing our stories, especially through the talking stick, where, there is respect. But by sharing our stories, we help to heal each other, because everybody's got a piece of the puzzle. And as I complete my piece of the puzzle, and you complete your piece of the puzzle, the whole picture becomes more and more apparent. The whole understanding of the universe and creation becomes more apparent. And so I would say heal yourself, heal the planet. And it's my job to complete me. All right, I'll shut up.
I was just going to tell our audience, because they may not understand the talking stick. Would you like to elaborate on that?
Well, for me, the talking stick, look at just about every tribal culture on the planet. And when the elders gathered, in the village hall to discuss whatever the issues were in the community, they would gather together and use the protocol of the talking stick. Now, the talking stick invokes responsibility on every attendee. And everyone that attends a gathering is an emotional adult. They've been through the rite of passage, which usually involves something like diving off a tall cliff into the ocean or jumping off the top of a tree with a vine around, been initiated from childhood into emotional and spiritual adulthood. And so just imagine we've gathered in this straw hat. The meeting is called to order. And then the responsibility of everyone there is to be responsible. So the person holding the talking stick has the floor. And while that person has the floor, he shares his issue, his truth, what's happening for him. And the other people in the group say nothing. They are there to listen with their heart and not hear with their mind. They're there to listen with their heart and hear with their mind. And so once that person is shared, they'll put down the talking stick, and the next person will pick up the talking stick and share their truth. And in that way, as the talking stick goes round, everybody shared their truth on what's present for them. And at the end of the meeting, there was a general discussion about how to solve these issues. That it's a win-win for all. There's no ego there in the process of using the talking stick. And if you don't know the difference between listening with the heart and hearing with the mind, right now, all I'm doing is sharing data with you. But if in your mind there's this chatter going on that says, oh yeah, I like that. No, I didn't like that. Oh, you were spot on there. Ah, he was wrong there. So if he keeps up with this, I'm going to have to interrupt. Well, that's hearing with the mind. You know, that's an egoic response. But if you're actually listening with your heart, there's just a contentment. Like I said before, thank you for sharing. I now know you better, and I can understand where you are at right now. And that's what I so love about the protocol of the talking stick. It's a level playing field. And that's why people in those communities, the spiritually and emotionally adult people, gathered in those communities, because it didn't matter how many turned up. Everyone knew that they were going to get their chance to share their truth. There was no judgment, just acceptance and a common resolution at the end. And that's what I love about the talking stick. Wow, that got a bit deep, didn't it?
It was beautiful. Yeah, and Mary's heritage, they often look at the person's heart instead of in their eyes while the person's speaking. So Barry kind of clears that up, because he doesn't, in the European society, you're supposed to look somebody in the eye. And so, unless he cleared it up, there could be some misinterpretation of that. So, yeah, we use the talking stick a lot, and I think this society is losing some of the art of listening, and I think with the talking stick, it can be brought back. I wish more families would use it with their children.
Yeah, well, it's a great video I come across on YouTube, a TED Talk, about the process of using the talking stick. But it's something I've used for years, and yeah, it's, for me, what I love about it is it does go back to my opening statement that we are all Sue, that we're all sovereign, that we're all unique, and that we're all equal. And the arena of the talking stick creates a safe place for everybody to share their truth. And I think it was Shakespeare that said, the greatest love I can give to anyone is to simply share my truth. All this bullshit about political correctness. No, I'm not here to make you feel good. I'm here to share my truth. I'm just sharing data. If you have an emotional response to what I'm sharing, well, that's yours. I'm not responsible for your feelings. You are. And I hopefully I share my truth in a non-judgmental way. For me, how can I put it? Political correctness is the epitome of codependent behavior, and is the absolute antithesis of the right of free speech. So here I am, I go by the name of Bob Eden. I am blunt, deal with it. I know who I am. And if you are not creating your life, who is?
Absolutely.
Well, Barry, was there any more questions for Bob, or can he go on to his part 2?
Doesn't look like anybody's popping up here, right?
I think people are being bashed.
Yeah, everybody's just sitting here listening. So, yes, please continue, brother.
No worries, mate, as we say in Australia. Do you get a feel for the energy of where I'm at? My life is joyous. You know, because I don't compete with anybody. You know, why would I? I've got nothing to prove because I know I'm okay. And it's competition that's killing humanity. It's time to move from competition to cooperation, to work as a community in common unity. Okay, I'm going to have to write some of these down, you know. Okay, we get on with the tools. The tools. I suppose my number one tool is question everything. Question everything. Because I began to realise that everything I was taught by my parents or taught at school in the education system, well, it's not an education system, it's an indoctrination system to produce parrots and robots. It teaches people what to think, not how to think. And if you have an original thought, you end up in a corner with a dunce cap on your head. And another tool I came across, and I'd love to thank Ian Lungold and his work on the Mayan calendar. I've got a phrase from him that about 5 million years ago, mankind dropped the curly tail, the prehensile tail, and picked up the mind as a tool to use. Now I let that bubble with me for a while, and what came out for me was my mind is just a tool that I use when I choose, for I'm so much more than my mind. And how I silence my mind was I tend to work with pictures or videos, you know, and I've just been reading Shakti Gawain and creative visualization. So on the inside of my skull, the inside of my forehead, I posted a picture, and then that picture became a movie. And so this is what the movie looked like. It's like I'm running down this underground tunnel with fluorescent lights in the ceiling, and it's like a James Bond movie, you know, dun, 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 dun. And I get to the end of the tunnel, and there's two huge glass sliding doors, and beyond that is the computer room of the mind. So as I approach the doors, they slide open, and I can hear the dark satanic hum of the hard drives. Now over on the right, there's a big red switch. So I wander over to the big red switch, and above it, somebody had posted a public health warning. Beware, thinking can seriously damage your well-being. So in my movie, I just took hold of the big red switch and went clunk and turned the switch off, and I can hear the hard drives spinning down. And so in my mind's eye, I played that video over and over and over again until I came to the realization that my mind is just a tool that I use when I choose. And so now I treat my mind like I treat my best mate, my little puppy dog Barnaby. Well, he's not a puppy, he's 13 now. And so I say to my mind, come on, hurry up, mind. I want you to go off and do some research into sonoluminescence or whatever, and come back and report to me. So off my mind goes, wagging its little tail, because it's had some attention from the master, and eventually it comes back and reports to me. So I say, thank you very much, mind. I give it a treat, pat it on the head, and say, right, mind, now, back in your basket, I'll take you for another run tomorrow. So that's how I handle my mind, and that's how I've, my mind is just another tool in my toolkit. It's not me. I live in heart space, not head space. Oh, dear. And tools. Yeah, and that just brought me to a bumper sticker that, for me, thinking is the weapon of mass destruction. Because while people are thinking, they're not feeling. And it's the feelings that are doing the healing. For me, thinking is a language of the mind, and feeling is a language of your soul. What are the tools? Question everything, absolutely question. Because everything I ever taught, I found was a lie. I've been lied to. Yeah. I was so angry to realise that. But how can I put it? Life is meant to be simple. Keep it simple, sovereign. And so now, another tool, I just listen to my body and obey my body. Like, when my body is tired, we sleep. And when my body is awake, we play. It's simple. My dogs have taught me all I need to know about how to live in the moment, live in the now. It's eat, sleep, drink, pee, poo, play, and if there's nothing interesting going on, take a nap. These guys have got it nailed. Yeah. Like, if anybody, would like a copy of my story, then just contact me on Facebook and I'll gladly send it out, because I'm in the process of writing a book that's, and it's called The Gift of Depression, my little scrapbook. But there are so many tools, but the most important one is actually doing the work. Like TV, for me, means TerraVision. I haven't had a TerraVision since 1995. And why? Because it's full of programs. While you're watching television, you're being programmed. Get it? And for me, DR or doctor just stands for drug retailer. Because that's all they're doing. They're just supporting the petrochemical society that we're currently living in. And from some of the research I've done, my heart goes out to people in America, because Americans account for about 5% of the world's population, and yet they consume about 90% of the world's pharmaceuticals, most of which are antidepressants. And so that's a pill-popping society. And all those pills are doing is allowing people to function as numbed-out robots. Only because those people are frightened of the power of their feelings. But it is the power of their feelings that will heal them. And beyond that fear of facing your demons, there is paradise. There is bliss. That's where I am. I have created my own Garden of Eden. Anyway, I think I've said enough on that for now, but I'll just go with the flow. So, it's time for me to have a smoko. So please, anybody respond and ask me anything. But all I can ever do is share what works for me. For me, that is the essence of the hero's journey. And what I got from the hero's journey was, you just run across the plain, you're approaching the forest, and you push through the undergrowth, and you see a path off to the right in the undergrowth. And you know that is the path of someone else. You know that you have to break your own trail. So please respond. I need a smoke though.
Oh, as Barry knows, I can talk, so. Put a
Go
microphone
for it,
or
darling.
something.
Go for it.
Okay. You have your smoke. Yeah, I mean, this is heavy stuff, but light stuff too. I know that we have a big population of people taking antidepressants. Almost everybody I know, to be honest, takes something. Yeah, I guess. Yeah. I'm not speechless very often, but a little bit tonight. So yeah, we go back to listening to ourselves, to our, I'm also writing a book, and it is about listening to your inner counselor, kind of teaching people not to need us. I said that's kind of counterintuitive, but I want people to know that they have the answers if they can get quiet enough to hear it. If they could connect to that, they have all the answers themselves. Often Barry and I are just there to let them hear themselves or let them talk till they hear themselves. But there's so much fear out there that I think fear stops a lot of people from really discovering their true self, and that makes me sad, but it's their journey. Barry, thoughts?
That's what I'm saying here.
Makes a lot of sense.
It does. It's absolutely opening up my eyes some on here and stuff. So I'm just kind of
I found in my own journey, and I've faced my own death probably about a dozen times, which is why I appreciate every moment of my life, because if you haven't faced your own death, how can you really appreciate life? So I've got no time for couch potatoes, these whingers and people bitching about life. Well, you create your life. Why have you created such drama and intensity? Oh, you make me feel so angry. Well, how? Thank you for giving me that power over you, but I don't want it.
Right.
No. People say, I just want to be happy all the time. And I say bullshit. If you're happy all the time, how would you know? Sometimes I'm happy, sometimes I'm sad, but I'm always content. It's like you got to have the highs and lows. You got to have the balance there. And if you like, I'll share a story that was really pivotal for me, and it was the night I totally bet my life on trusting my inner tuition, my inner knowing. If that's okay with you, unless you've got some questions.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Go ahead.
Okay. I've got the aircon going in the background because I live in the tropics. Yeah. Because it's about 35 centigrade here. And it's not even, it gets up to about 45 centigrade, so you can do your own calculations. And I thought America went metric. You are who you
it's
are.
About zero here. It's about zero here then on the centigrade.
Well, when I was working for ESO in the UK at their research establishment, I was responsible for operating a vehicle test chamber, a dynamometer, an enclosed environment, and we could take trucks and tractors and anything from plus 50 down to minus 40 degrees centigrade. So, I spent probably about 15 years of my life working life at minus 40 degrees centigrade with a 70 mile an hour wind blowing across me. So now you know why I live in the tropics. But I'll get back to that turning point in my life. It's probably about 8 years ago now, and I was living on my boat, Fidelio, which means the faithful one. in Pioneer Bay. And it was about 7 o'clock at night, and it's dark here. And I'm sitting there on the laptop, you know, on Facebook, and I was on my dog's Facebook page, Randy, because I love looking at the world through the eyes of my dog. I'm quirky like that. Anyway, all of a sudden the lights went off. And I thought, bugger. So I looked across at the volt meter and it said 13 volts. I thought, wow, you know, it's nothing to do with the electrical system. But also the lights went off and I couldn't breathe. I could not breathe. And then just at the edge of my left-hand side, my port side field of vision, was this black, ethereal, silky, wispy presence that no matter how far I turned my head to the left, it was always in the same position. And I thought, oh, bugger. Hello, old friend. It's the Green Reaper come to claim me, and it's all over, Red Rover. And so, I don't know about you guys, if you've ever faced your own imminent death, time stands still, and that increasing noise that you can hear is the rain falling right now. God love the rain, puts the bushfires out. Yes, I'm sat there on the laptop, still not breathing, still with the wispy ghost next to me. So I just typed into Facebook, hey guys, if I don't post anything in the next 20 minutes, can you get volunteer marine rescue to come out and get Barnaby? Because that was my concern, that if I died, like, he'd run out of food. Well, after he'd eaten me. And so I just sat there, and I'm naked, which you do in the tropics when you live on the boat. And I just checked in with my heart, and I stood up and walked up on deck and looked up at the sky, and there was a full moon, but there were 2 full moons. I could see 2 full moons. So I just jumped into the ocean, and it's after dark in the bay, surrounded by mangroves where crocodiles live. It's after dark, and sharks feed after dark. Bugger the sharks. So I just jumped into the ocean and lay back and spread myself out like a big starfish. And then all of a sudden, there was a big and I could breathe again. And that was the night I consciously chose to bet my life on trusting my intuition. And that's what it took for me, that leap of faith. So now when I make a decision, I don't sit there and write, well, what's the pros and what's the cons? I just check in with my heart. In whatever situation I'm in, does this feel right for me? And now in my life, what is not nurturing for me, I simply call the beast, and I no longer feed the beast. Yeah, it may be something to do with the rain. You know, you're aware of the bushfires in Australia,
yes,
and they've been horrendous.
Yes.
But they're all, for me, they're all into. The severity was intentional, and it's all part of Agenda 21. But that's another discussion entirely. For me, I've contributed to over 200 different radio shows, and the message I want to get out there is to bust this myth of mental illness, because it's a scam. And anybody can research the history of mental illness. You go back to the 1900s, and if you were an unwed mother, you were incarcerated in Bedlam, because it was thought at the time that you must be mental to have a child outside of wedlock. And also, if you were homosexual, that was a mental illness. Now, psychiatrists have got this book, the DSM, Diagnostic Statistic Manual, that's, you know, that's their Bible. But it's all, they make it up as they go along, you know. And all that happens, anybody that pops a pill is putting $1 in Big Pharma's pocket. From my own experience, and I spent over 20 years, and I took all of the antidepressants, but with my scientific mind, I compiled a database to just list the effects of these chemicals. And they've all got one common denominator. They all produce feelings of anxiety, depression, or suicidal thoughts. And it took me 20 years to realise, well, this is a no-brainer. These guys are not looking for cures. They just want to maintain their customer base and grow their customer base. I came across a beautiful graph the other day where it plots the growth of sales of antidepressants globally. And the curve is exponential, right? And that's understandable because the evolution of consciousness is exponential. But somebody also plotted on that same page, they plotted the growth of the sales of antidepressants with the growth of global suicides. And the curves match. Now, am I the only one that gets this? Taking antidepressants kills people. As I said before, you know, I know lots of people that have died from not feeling. But I don't know anybody that's died through feeling. And who was that beautiful actor, Robin, that committed suicide? Robin Williams. I take my hat off to the man. He was courageous. He spent his whole life trying to make the world laugh, trying to make the world get in touch with the love within them, and that's what he shared. And I honour his courage, and he said, well, my message is not getting through here. I'm out of here. I'm out of here. You know, maybe next time I come around, people will listen. People will listen. If you're content to live as a wage slave and support this corruption, well, go for it. But I'm no victim. I am a sovereign. I am master and commander of my life. You know, I'm not perfect. I smoke too much. I drink too much. I exercise about as much as a koala. but I'm content with me. I'm content with me. And I'm just a simple bloke. And if I can do it, anybody can. You know. My best tip to anybody is, throw the TV out the window, turn your mind off, and start looking for your truth. But for me, again, as a sovereign, this phrase got me out of codependent behaviour, and that is, unsolicited advice is abuse. Now, for me as a sovereign, I have noticed that when I'm struggling most in my life, that is when I learn the most about me and my journey in my life. It's also the time that I attract all the rescuers. Well, what you need to do here, mate, is blah, blah, blah. And I just, nicely respond to the guy and say, well, sorry, mate, but I'm here to live my life my way, not your way. If you've got a problem with that, it's your problem. Deal with it. I told you I was blown.
We know where we stand. All right. Well, I guess we should proceed into the third portion of this program, and that was conclusions. Is that correct?
Yeah. Okay, another cigarette, another glass of wine. More wine for my friends. Cheers.
Cheers.
Ah, well, where am I now? I'm content with me, and as I've already stated, that for me, everything is unfolding perfectly. You know, look at the shenanigans with all the governments around the world. And every empire has its day. And this empire is crumbling. And it is becoming more and more desperate and more ridiculous in its final death throes, because it knows the end is near. So if I, go up a couple of levels and look down at the world, and the Mayans predicted this. The Mayans predicted this. They predicted so much. They predicted that the age of integrity will begin on, the 12th, the 22nd of December 2012. And that's when the age of integrity starts overcoming the age of power. And I'm sure you'll agree, if you look around, power is ruling the roost. Not people's rights or freedoms, but there's this little group of people and all they want is power. And that's the age that we're coming out of. And as a hippie, I knew it. This is the dawning of the age of Aquarius. I'm still an old hippie. But if you envisage the age of power and the age of integrity is like, it's just another book coming up and sliding over the age of power. So the process began in 2012, and wherever I look, more and more people are waking up to the deception that we are not supposed to live this way. We are not supposed to live in competition. We are supposed to live in cooperation and harmony. We're supposed to feel free to speak our truth and not go, oh, I can't say that because it's going to upset somebody. But what a load of crap. So wherever I look now, I'm encouraged by this increasing age of integrity. And so from where I'm sitting, where attention goes, energy flows. What's not nurturing for me, I just don't go there anymore. I think that's probably one of the primal laws of creation is what I give my attention to, I become conscious of. So while I'm giving attention to war, drama, rape, pedophilia and all this stuff, I'm actually feeding that. So I give my conscious attention to cooperation, to community gardens, to helping my fellow man, to sharing my story. So for me, it all comes down to people taking responsibility for their own lives and stop being bloody victims, stop being sheep. You have a right to have a joyous life. There are so many myths out there, like the myth of mental illness. And one thing that I can't understand is, since the dawn of the Industrial Revolution, mankind has been developing machines to take the labour out of their life. Now here we are 200 odd years down the track, and we're working harder than we ever did before. Like my dad, on his single income could afford to support our family, buy a house, own a car, But nowadays, it takes both parents working, just to meet basic human needs. So we're being screwed. We're being screwed because most people are just happy enough to sit on the lounge watching the football. But if you want a beautiful life, you've got to own your own life. You've got to be responsible for your life. And all these muppets in Parliament. But I'm encouraged. I really am encouraged by the way humanity's going. And I just feel so grateful for being alive at this moment because, as I said, the evolution of consciousness is exponential, and we've turned the corner. We're just going to swoop up there. So just hang on tight for a wild ride. But above all, be true to your own self. Because if you're not being true to your own self, what's the point? Smoko.
All right. So I hope everybody's like taking this in and giving them food for thought, because I know a lot of my friends suffer with depression and what they see as mental illness. And I'm hoping that this gives them hope, that not feeling understood, feeling like everybody just wants them to take drugs, that there is another answer. There is a answer, not another answer. So my wish for everybody is that they get to listen to this show. It's going to be archived. You can re-listen to it. I think this is a big chunk of information that people are going to have to like digest. So I think it would be helpful for you that do dance with depression. I almost use the word suffer, see? And I stop myself. You're dancing with depression. Feel with your heart, study your mind. To stand up and take your life back. So I'm hopeful that this conversation with Bob and others who have been on, who have danced with depression and have come out spiritually enlightened, will also help you. And you know, well, you're the only one that can help you. But wow, language is so hard for me tonight. I don't understand it.
Hey.
Because I think words are important, and words have a lot of strength. So if I say suffer with depression, that's putting a negativity on it. Kind of changing my words better.
Can I respond?
Please.
Sure.
Yeah, another one of my bumper stickers, another one of my tools is, my words are my spells, so I do cast them wisely. For the universe is always listening and takes everything I say literally. Literally.
Yeah.
So I am very precise in the words that I use because they create my reality. And my closing statement really is, like, if you are not creating your life, who is? And if you are not creating your own life, then you are a victim by definition. And I am sovereign.
I think that's very important. I think a lot of us have been formed or allowed ourselves to be formed by society, religion, politics, all the things that we feel are expected of us, or keeping up with the Joneses, making sure our yard looks a certain way, our leaves are all raked up, and all those things. And if I look back on my life and I spent begrudgingly time raking the leaves when I really didn't want to because I thought they were beautiful, then that was a pretty wasteful big chunk of my life there. So
Well, I've come to the conclusion, and going back to what I said at the start, the universe operates under the KISS principle: keep it simple, sovereign. And for me, there's only one law. There's only one law: do no harm. And I have only one right. and it's the same for everybody. I only have one right, and that is the right of self-determination. And everybody has that right. Every alien, every being in the whole of creation, that's the only right anyone has, the right of self-determination. So thank you guys for sharing your time with me. Yeah, I could go and tell you funny stories, but I think we've covered all the bases, don't you?
All right. Yeah.
So is there anything, Bob, before we go, that you wanted to promote for anybody else that might be listening in your area? Are you still doing folk music? Is there anything that you're wanting to promote?
The only thing I would like to promote is if anybody's listening that has, a radio show or a TV show. I've appeared on, before it died, David Icke's, the People's TV. Or my mission at the moment is just to get my message out there. That, depression is not an illness. That,
right.
You are your only guru.
Right.
Bob Eden on Facebook. Keep it simple, sovereign. I don't have a web page. I don't have a blog. But I'm just here to get the message out. And I feel that it's time for this message to get out there. So thank you so much, and I love you all. Thank you. Because thank you for sharing your time.
No, absolutely.
Thank you.
Hold on just 1 second, Bob. I'm going to bring somebody on here that sees. Don't be shocked you're bringing a regular on here. Hi, Ramona.
Hi, how are you?
Good, hon. How are you?
Hello,
I'm doing great. I was trying to get everything ready for my class tomorrow, and I'm like, I gotta listen.